Thanks for tuning in to the Palm Beach Podcast, a weekly show highlighting people making a positive impact in our community. With your hosts, sports chiropractor and athletic trainer, Dr. James Spencer, photographer and art director, Mike Jones. Our show is brought to you by Pump House Coffee Roasters, Opportunities in Delray Beach, and the Lotus Travel Company for retreats and tours in Palm Beach County. Hello, welcome to the Palm Beach Podcast. My name is Mike Jones. I'm hanging out at Media Zone on Singer Island with a couple cool dudes. Dr. James Spencer, how you doing today, buddy?
Man, it's a pleasure today. Honestly, beautiful blue skies.
Nice sunny blue skies.
It is, and a crisp, clean air today. So, we're fortunate to live here in South Florida and to have a special guest in the studio with us today.
You're very right. We love having special guests in the studio, but honestly, just sitting out there chatting with you for the last half an hour has been amazing. Very, very excited to have you on the show representing the Gray team.
Cary, introduce yourself.
So pleased to be here. My name is Cary Reichbach. I am a United States Army veteran and the co-founder and right now the current president of Gray Team Military Community here in Palm Beach County.
Why don't you share with the listeners a little bit about Gray Team, how it got started, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So Gray Team was kind of a concept that was developed from my own difficulties transitioning from the United States Army into the civilian landscape and figuring out how to navigate without falling by the wayside as so many veterans do. I think that there is a process that takes place when you join the military as a youth, which typically that's how 99% of our military is founded, by recruiting out of high school. So you would typically join the military at 18 years old. You're very impressionable, and you go through an indoctrination period, if you will. You could call it brainwashing if you wanted to, but it is necessary. Our country's been at war for way over 200 years. I mean, we're a very warlike.
Too long.
Yes, much too long. And because of that, we have to keep our military stocked full of soldiers. And soldiers need to be able to run towards danger without hesitating and be able to kill on command. And I have to use the word kill because that's what is ingrained into us is kill. In fact, that's a standard Marine response when a church says, do you hear what I'm saying? And everybody says, amen. The Marines say, do you understand? And they go, kill. Okay. So that's ingrained. And we need soldiers out there on the front line to defend this country. We do. I'm not here to argue that. So we have a program that takes place, and it's anywhere from 8 to maybe 40 weeks, depending on what the military occupational specialty is, or MOS. And then, you're released out of kind of this indoctrination program and you can actually now do your job. Unfortunately, when your body is damaged or your head is just a mess and you can no longer function, then the military says, okay, son, we're done with you. You did great. Thank you for serving your country. Here is a prescription for sleeping pills, because you're probably not going to sleep much anymore. You're going to have bad dreams. You're going to wake up with night sweats. Your heart's going to be pounding. Here's another prescription for antidepressants, because you're basically giving up your culture, your language, all your friends, your family, your purpose in life, your home, and you're going to go out into the civilian world starting with nothing. So here's a prescription for antidepressants, because you're going to be depressed and have anxiety. And when those two aren't enough, this is a suicide hotline call. Here's a card. It has that number. Give them a call when things get really bad. And what they don't tell you is that you'll be Baker acted. You'll have armed police officers come to your home and take you away in handcuffs and hold you for 72 hours to determine if you're a threat to yourself or others. And good luck out there, son, because it's rough.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so you're actually leaving a combat situation in many cases, and you're sitting on the floor in your living room, 30 hours later, and you have no idea what to do with your life. You have no skills really that translate into the civilian community, and your knees hurt, your back hurts, you have constant headache, you have ringing in your ears, and you're 23 years old. It's not like,
Correct.
You're ready to retire.
Got a lot of life to live
still. Yeah. So what do you do? And that's kind of where Gray Team was formed.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
It really is. You should be proud of that.
I'm extremely proud of it. I'm extremely proud of the fact that, our success rate is just beyond anything I've ever seen. As far as I'm aware, we are the only organization, nonprofit in the nation that can actually boast of almost 100% success rate. And we work really, really hard to maintain that. And I think that we would be so happy to share that with with the Veterans Administration, with pretty much anybody who would listen long enough. But what we're finding is it's not really the government that's interested in solving these problems. It's the civilian community, and because they understand what a resource veterans truly are. I mean, we're natural leaders. We're pretty much fearless. We've already gone through hell and come back. So, running a company is nothing for us. We know how to organize. We know how to make split decisions in an instant under extreme duress and stress. So I think that, a community really benefits by having veterans in there, and keeping them alive is, in my idea, just a huge priority.
I agree. And again, that's why we wanted to have you on the show, is to share this with the listeners of Palm Beach County, and to highlight the success that you guys have done with the Gray Team. I think it'd be a great starting point to explain literally the phases like you did to us out there, how the Gray Team works from, I'm a veteran, I come into the Gray Team's facility. How does that work?
Well, the first thing you need to know is that there is never a cost to a veteran. So every service they receive, from their drinks to their coffee, to food that we provide, to personal training, every service they get is 100% complimentary. It's the least we can do as repayment for the fact that at one point they signed a blank check to the government for everything up into including their life. And for that, we want to at least, try to return them back to some state of normalcy. So to answer your question, they come in, they're interviewed, and we figure out from a standpoint of what are they capable of now. Some just need community, which we're happy to provide, but many of them have traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress disorder. And the PTSD is especially troubling because it affects their personality and their ability to maintain a job and good relations with their wife and children or husband. A lot of females also have PTSD. So we have to determine if they're capable of moving up. And if not, then we start them at a little lower level. So we would do this assessment. We're going to do an infrared scan of their body to determine how much body fat they have, how bad their posture is, how weak their bones are, how much muscle mass, what their strength levels are. their mental abilities, short-term memory. If we start to see any type of a dysfunction in that, then we go a step further and we apply a neurocognitive exam. So we test short-term memory, reflexes, things like that. And if we note that there is brain damage, which could be caused from a number of things, being blown up 3 or 4 times is
That'll cause it.
yeah, and
Eating lead.
yeah, and eating lead, exactly, without taking it off the paint on the walls. One thing people don't realize, just to go on a kind of a little tangent here, is we've made incredible advances in battlefield medicine and also in the safety of our troops in just in the last 19 years of the war on terror. So what used to take a soldier's life of being blown up by an IED or shot, in multiple times, now with the protective body armor and the up armoring of Humvees, a lot of times the vehicle can be, lifted off the ground by a huge explosion, and everybody inside still has their arms and legs attached to them, which never would have happened before. You would die from that. In fact, when I was in the Army, the Humvees were completely unarmored, and a lot of them had canvas doors and tops, and bullets go right through that as well as explosions. So they changed all that, and now,
Thankfully.
yes, thankfully, but it's created new problems that you wouldn't have expected, and that is that after a huge explosion goes off, and the rest of your team comes out, and you're taken off duty because you just got your Humvee was lifted 8 feet in the air and then flipped 6 times by an explosion. You check, and your arms and legs are still attached, and they go, shake it off, you're fine. And what's happened is that vacuum that created that explosion has damaged your brain, and it's only going to be later on, after the event itself, that your personality is going to change, and you have an invisible wound that no one sees, and little by little your brain starts to deteriorate, and you start to have a dysfunction where you can't pay attention anymore. You're losing your vocabulary. Your personality is aggressive. You're angry. You don't sleep. And all that is traced back to that explosion that should have killed you, but now it doesn't. And so eventually you'll be returned to the civilian world, and they're going to say you're fine, but you're not.
And what kind of resources do y'all have at the Gray Team to help that?
So it's a great question. We will sit down, and if we determine that this has occurred, we can do a full brain scan, determine where the damage is, and if they don't have any bleeding upstairs or any kind of issues, and we'll clear that with a physician through the scan. Then they go into what's called hyperbaric oxygen treatment, or HBOT, and that's 40 hours of high pressure oxygen in a tank, really similar to if either of you are divers, that when you come up too fast, you get the bends and you're under high pressure. We do the same thing for veterans, and that high pressure oxygen can actually channel into the brain and begin the healing process. And at the exact same time, we bring them in and we start firing lasers into their brain with special helmets that were designed by a company called Weber Medical in Germany and donated to us. And so we're hitting the brain from 2 different angles, so to speak. And after that period, if they're, we'll take another test, compare that to the baseline, and see if we've actually made progress. And 9.9 times out of 10, we have. We've never actually seen somebody not progress from that. It may be a 25% increase, or it could be 100%, but it's always an increase. And then from there, we begin doing the other things. So now we're going to say, okay, your diet is horrible. You've put on a lot of fat since you left the military because you don't know how to eat properly. I know that sounds crazy. You're 25 years old, but you've never fed yourself. So Burger King and McDonald's are not the answer. Once in a while, pizza is okay, but not every day. So that's a huge thing. So we take the diet and we completely dismantle it and teach them about organics and fresh fruits and vegetables. And then we give them personal training. Again, this is all complimentary. They'll come in 3 times a week and we'll figure out where their strengths and weaknesses are. They may have balance issues. They may have, movement that causes pain. We have physical therapists that will come in and donate their time and figure out, workarounds for the exercises we want them to do and they're incapable of at that moment. And then they'll progress. So it's typically a 90-day program. It can be longer if they need more help. And the best part is when they graduate, they get a certificate and they get their picture in the paper and all that. But what's more important is they stay on because now they're part of the community. And they will be mentors to the next transitioning kids coming out of the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. So it's very sustainable. And then we also provide community events. Every Sunday we do a ruck march, which sounds absolutely horrible. And to anybody who is in the military and has done a ruck march, it's probably the most miserable you ever were, but there's something about it that brings people back together. It's a shared misery.
I was going to say, what does that entail?
So a ruck march is we have U.S. Army issue rucksacks that if you ever were in a combat situation, you basically carry all your ammo, your equipment, everything on your back. It can be anywhere from 40 pounds to 120 pounds of gear. And you carry it in this backpack that
it already sounds miserable, by the way.
Was probably designed by some torture chamber.
Sure.
And it squeaks constantly when you're walking. Because the frame is made out of plastic. I don't know. So we load that up with, depending on where you're at physically and athletically, we load that up and then we do kind of a fast walk through a very scenic area. And having all that weight on your body is actually, it burns 2-3 times as many calories. You don't have to run, which a lot of veterans can't because their knees are shot from jumping out of airplanes or what have you, ankles bad. So you can just walk, but you're burning a ton of calories. Your core is hit constantly because you have all this weight that you're carrying, and you sweat like instantly. So there's a detox that happens because it's really an exertion. And then everybody kind of pairs up, you meet people that you didn't know before. And now we're starting to get civilians, which I'm amazed, want to come out and ruck march with us and talk to veterans. It's their only exposure, if you will, to somebody who's actually, worn a uniform and fought for this country. And they enjoy creating that camaraderie too. And they come back over and over again. And eventually they want to purchase their own ruck because they really enjoy it. So I don't want to say it's fun, but apparently it is to other people.
Well, it builds community.
It definitely is a community builder. So we do that. We have a safe space that's upstairs in the Gray Team headquarters building, and that has lounges.
Which is in Boca, correct?
That's in Boca. It has lounges and pool table and big flat screen and video games. And this is kind of a place where they can come and get together and talk about, the issues that they're having, but feel safe, that they're surrounded by other veterans rather than, talking to a psychologist who has never served and has no idea what you're talking about, and has actually been known to say, and this is a true story, we had a veteran who came in. He was United States Army Special Forces, and he witnessed one of his best friends,
Yeah.
He witnessed one of his best friends in his unit get hit in the face by a sniper, and basically had his friend's brains splatter onto him, who killed instantly. And he was obviously never the same after that. He went to the Veterans Administration to get help. And a woman...
Take a minute.
A woman, excuse me.
I think like this is even just a prime example of when we were talking before, like civilian versus not, there really is no, I think what we mentioned before, like you don't come back and you can't just be a civilian. You're always going to be a veteran, right? Like, and so moments like this is really cool for a civilian to even be
experiencing.
Yeah, and it makes it more, real.
Yeah, it's definitely real. Sorry, the female therapist that he saw listened to him explain how after that happened, everybody hit the ground, and a woman came running at their group, an older woman, like probably 50s or 60s, but in Afghanistan, that's like late aged, because it's a rough world out there. And she had an RPG, a rocket propelled grenade, that she was aiming to fire, and running at them. And he basically had to cut her in half with a machine gun to save everybody around him. And he explained, that his best friend, who had gone through high school with him and actually got deployed with him, went through boot camp and everything else, he still had his brain matter on his face and uniform, and he was engaging the enemy, and he had just machine gunned this woman in half who was running at him, somebody's grandmother, and he had nightmares from this reoccurring pretty much every night, keeping him from getting any kind of rest or tranquility. And her words to him were, after hearing him draw this out, and I cut it out, a lot of the details for brevity and for the audience, she said, "Well, you need to get over it."
That's lame.
It's unfortunate.
Like, just get over it. Like that.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. And that just shows this gap between, and this is I think he's 26 now. This is a kid. You don't just tell him, get over it. It's not like, hey, you broke up with your girlfriend.
Correct.
You're sad. You'll be fine. Get over it. So that's the kind of things that we deal with. And, if left untreated, the pain of living like that will lead to suicide. It's documented. We lose, according to the United States Department of Veteran Affairs, we lose between 20 and 22 veterans a day in this country to suicide. And that was a statistic from 2018. Since COVID has occurred, they're estimating that that statistic is now close to 26 a day because of the forced isolationism. So if you watch the newspaper or the news or anything, occasionally you'll see a couple of soldiers die in training accidents, in a helicopter crash, or in combat. But it's pretty rare, and it makes headlines. So if, we lose one or two a month, we figure that's normal. We're losing 26 a day in this country. I mean, it's infinitely more dangerous than for a soldier to come back to the United States after fighting in combat with our enemies. It's more dangerous for him to come home. And that's a shocking statistic. And that's one of the reasons that Gray Team exists.
Well, I was going to say that's what makes it so special and so unique.
Yeah, I think that, if people were actually aware of this incredible travesty that we're overlooking, these people who went out there and did what they had to do, and when they come back, we ignore them, and we have for years. It didn't start with my generation. I think everyone's heard of the Vietnam veterans who came back from a war that was completely unpopular, got spit on. They were exposed to Agent Orange. If they even survived the war, they came home and had all kinds of cancer and reproductive issues and things from the exposure to toxins. And they were never, ever treated for that. Up to this day, they were just left to die.
I've actually got a patient right now that has that.
Oh, wow.
Vietnam vet that was diagnosed with that. And it's that's why it kind of hits home for me. And again, why we wanted to have you on the show is to create this relatability and the realness of what y'all encounter, and to highlight how we can help as a community in Palm Beach County.
I think that one of the best ways, and you guys are really, really good at it, is just spreading awareness. I think if people truly understood what's happening in their community, they would be outraged by it and want to help. So our website is grayteam.org. That's greyteam.org. And I would encourage everyone to just sign up for emails, if just to get more involved and to see what we're doing. And if you want to help, obviously, we're not government sponsored. So any kind of financial help whatsoever, any type of small donation, $5 is fantastic, because we're in a situation now where, due to COVID, we are unable to hold any fundraising events, no golf tournaments, no galas, no, silent auctions, anything like that. And yet we have more veterans than ever that need help and less funding to do it. So we're not government supported. And that's a huge issue that the community actually could help with.
You hear that, all you listeners out there? Get on that website right now. Pay it forward.
And I think, coming from me, and I'm sure Spencer agrees too, but thank you.
Correct.
It's nice to see. And I know you came in with the shoes that only have the toe webbings, and you call things evaluations, and so I'm sure this guy right here is already gushing because he's all into the wellness factor, but the mental, the physical, and then the community seems like a really great way to help reacclimate to normal life back here in the United States.
I think it can be done, and you said it really clearly that nobody who comes back from these situations is ever going to be the same naive 18-year-old kid. They're just not, and so they'll always be a veteran. They're not going to be a civilian again, but that's okay. They can be an amazingly productive member of our society. They can contribute greatly. They signed up to serve, and they want to serve, and they can still serve in a lot of capacities. I think that one thing that's overlooked, a lot of people, care about children in our community, and there are a lot of charities that help feed and clothe and give school supplies to children. But the children of veterans are often overlooked by not realizing that if we can elevate the mindset and the health of the father or mother or sometimes both who served in the military, the children are direct beneficiaries of that because they have a much more stable home life. There's
Sure.
probably a better chance that their parents stay married and they don't have flash anger issues, and the children typically take the brunt of that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm very impressed with what you guys have created and what you've started, and it's a movement is really what it is. And for other locations out there, I mean, I see this as a template for other locations throughout the United States to help a lot of people.
I think that would be amazing. I mean, there's no ego involved, and I would much rather turn the reins of this over to a CEO who could actually do a much better job than I can.
And there's a lot of those in Palm Beach County who are willing to volunteer their time.
Yeah, we could use the mentorship. I'm just I was a military policeman in the Army. I know how to carry an M4 and a 45 caliber and a 9mm, and I'm great with all those kinds of things. But when it comes to running an organization that really should be spread throughout the United States, that's not my forte. So I would gladly accept any kind of help from anyone who has even a slight interest in finding out what we do. And also, I think it's very important to note that anything we do with veterans is relatable to civilians. So, veterans aren't the only ones with backaches, or people have car accidents and they are, as you well know,
Yeah.
they have damage to their bodies. And what we're doing, we're kind of exploring new frontiers with technology, but it can easily be used on civilians as well. And so if anybody's interested in attempting to try out some of the stuff that we have, we are so available to share any information or even the services themselves.
Well, thank you for serving the country and leading by example. And anybody else who you want to thank, why don't you give a little shout out to the camera over there?
Yeah, I'd actually like to thank Black Rifle Coffee for sponsoring us, Celsius energy drinks. We love your products, and we love having them in our facility. I also probably should reach out to the Home Depot Foundation, who has helped us build out the initial facility. And there are a lot more. I don't want to go after everybody. So if I left you off, it's not because we don't appreciate you. It's just a constraint of time.
Cary, thank you very much, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Palm Beach Podcast. Our show is brought to you by Pump House Coffee Roasters, Opportunities in Delray Beach, and the Lotus Travel Company for retreats and tours in Palm Beach County.